the Speak, episode 49. Do the chickens have large talons?
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
In case you missed the free training on March 20th called Presentation Profit Formula, no worries. We're providing an encore presentation this week on March 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Go to whatthespeak.com/formula to sign up, and you'll learn about the 5 P's to a perfect presentation that converts your audience into sales, plus uncovering simple techniques to boost confidence and reduce filler words like and ah. And then lastly, we'll take a look at how to create a sexy presentation that builds instant credibility. If you'd like to sign up, go to whatthespeak.com/formula. Karen Luniw, are you ready to answer the question, what the speak?
Woohoo! Let's go!
All right. So Karen, you are an author, a speaker, and a coach on both personal and business attraction, which we'll talk about in a minute. Plus, you're the creator of a popular podcast called The Law of Attraction Tips. But let's hear it directly from you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, my claim to fame is the Law of Attraction Tips podcast. That's kind of where I burst onto the scene. I have 20 million downloads. I've been in the top 10 in self-help for the last 10 years, or 6 years. Going overboard there. But really, so law of attraction is the base of everything I do, but really it's all about mindset. And so that's what I focus on in terms of what I coach, what I speak about, and what I write about is how do you actually attract what you want into your life? And it all is about how we shift and change our mindset.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now when you're out speaking, what are some of the topics that you're typically discussing?
Well, again, it's around mindset, but it's around mindset in terms of what it has to do with your business, how you grow your business, how you attract clients. I can speak to being innovative, productivity. It's all about all those kinds of things, but those are specifically the areas. Again, mindset's kind of the base of it all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm really curious to talk with you through your personal story, your journey, your origins as a speaker, which I think this is kind of cool. I'm excited to have this discussion with you. So can you walk us through, what was the first thing? Where did this start for you? How did you get to a place where you began speaking regularly? Mm-hmm. And then we'll talk through some of the things you might have struggled with or maybe still struggle with.
Sure. So really, I mean, the real origin of all of this was reading Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited. Oh gosh, here's one of his first big books, anyways. And in that he talks about speaking being the number one thing that people hate to do, and they'd rather die. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, it's not just me, so I want to do that. So I actually started that point. I was working in the human resources employment field, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try and facilitate classes, and that's where it started for me. Prior even to that, though, it's funny because, of course, podcasting is and doing my podcast is the origin of my business, really. But that started years ago. My dad was an audiophile, right? He had an audio was mostly an audio tech kind of business years and years ago. So he was always recording me as a child. So that whole thing where people have an issue with hearing their voice, well, I got over that years ago. Yep. So that's where it really started, was there. And then back in 2005, 2006, I was still in my corporate job and I wanted to burst out. And so thought the podcast would be a great way to do it. And, and just really started at that. Started learning about podcasting and got my first podcast up in December 2006. And there was no looking back from that point. But then from there, again, it was just taking that facilitation that I was doing, had been doing in the employment field, and just translating that to the stage.
That's awesome. So it really started with with kind of this passion that you had for this particular topic.
Yes.
And really kind of immersing yourself in that and becoming an expert. And then using the podcast to launch kind of the springboard for you to be able to do things. And I think it's really an interesting, scenario to where you went from somebody who got behind the microphone on a podcast and built your audience and kind of your platform and, really put yourself front and center as an expert on these topics, and then started speaking versus, a lot of times we see people who are, they go out there, they do their thing, maybe they write a book or whatever, they start doing keynotes or different presentations, workshops, what have you. Right. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to launch a podcast because I've got this audience and this is another way to help me kind of connect with that audience and build, an additional aspect to my audience.
Sure.
So it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's backwards, which is not unusual for me. But it was really good that way because again, my business wouldn't exist without the podcast. Again, like you said, it was just a great way to build a platform. And, I was able to put it out and put out the information and how I saw it, and share that with people. And if they didn't like it, it was like, oh, well, no big deal, right? If nobody ever listened to it, so what, right? It's pretty face lessons and pretty easy in that regard. But it was really popular right off the start, which was astonishing to me. Like in the first month in that January, I had like 18,000 downloads. And, wow. That's, big enough to fill some arenas, right? Arenas. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's just, mind blowing to me. And even today, it's mind boggling to me.
Yeah, that's a lot. How many millions of downloads did you say?
Over 20 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Very so crazy. It's like over 10,000 a day still, which is mind-boggling.
Well, and it's funny too because so I started a podcast right around that same time, like in 2006. I think it actually was December 2006.
Yeah.
And we did that for like 3 years, and it was one of those things that was a very niche audience, and people loved it, but it was something that it was still, at least for us, was like, you know what? A lot of people didn't know about podcasting even back then. It was a very small group. And then on top of it, we had a small audience.
Sure.
And so we ended up, stopping that podcast, but we did it for 3 years. And now to kind of see where we're at today, it's, 2014, and podcasting has just become something that's more and more mainstream, I guess we could call it. And to me, the potential right now is exponentially increasing as every month goes by because more and more people are discovering podcasts through their smartphones, and now a lot of car manufacturers are putting it in. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I remember even back in 2006, I went to an internet marketing conference in Vancouver, BC, and they were talking about podcasting, and it was like, this is the way it's going, right? So, and they were just starting to talk about mobile phones at that point, but it just hadn't hit anything by at that point. So yeah, it was in its infancy.
So as a speaker, obviously, you kind of got over that one hurdle that a lot of people struggle with, especially when rehearsing. You practice and maybe you record yourself through an audio microphone situation, or maybe it's a video camera you set up, and you play it back, and you're like, "Oh my God! Like, do I really sound like that, or do I really look like that?" and so obviously, it sounds like with kind of the history that you've had with your father being kind of an audiophile and recording you and you getting used to that wasn't an issue. But what are some of the things that you struggled with when you got out there and you started speaking to, sales professionals or executives or anybody that you were trying to teach this particular message or your approach to attraction?
Sure.
What did you struggle with?
Oh, well, initially the very first thing I struggled with is who's going to want to listen to me, right? That was, it's like, that was the biggest thing, because, at that point there was the bigwigs that were kind of out there speaking about this, and, who's going to listen to some gal who's really doing her podcast literally in my closet here in a small town in Canada, right? So, but I thought, no, there's an audience for everybody, right? And just in terms of attraction, that's just the way it works. If you're compelled to do it, there's people waiting for you. So, but then getting out into the business world, because the business world is really where I came from. I saw such value in it, but without it, so it's kind of getting over and how to explain it in a way that wasn't woo woo, right? Because and I still get that people, look at me cross-eyed and so I've translated that into more of a mindset message, and people get that. And then, it's so funny because now, compared to a number of years ago, I would talk about law of attraction. Like I say, people would kind of look at me cross-eyed, and then, and so I changed the message a little bit. And now people go, oh, that law of attraction stuff, that's what it sounds like. I love that stuff. So it's just like, okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, it was really just, that was the hardest thing again, was, okay, how do I change my message so people can hear it, without losing that base of what it really, what's really there, and the spirit of it all.
Well, the thing I think is interesting is being somebody who teaches others about mindset, that some of those initial things that you described were really mindset challenges, right? It's thinking like, oh, well, who's really going to want to listen to me? What do I have to offer? What do I have to contribute? But clearly, lots of people are drawn to this message that you have to share, and the things that you have to teach, and just recognizing that, if you are passionate about something and you really have something of value to offer an audience, it doesn't matter if you're Tony Robbins or if you're Joe Schmo who is just kind of getting started. Maybe you're not going to pack 5,000 people into a room, but if you get 5 people in a room and you share that, it just begins to snowball and snowball as you make an impact in those people's lives.
For sure. Yeah. And it's so powerful when you see people get it and they go, oh, I can use this. And hearing after the fact, oh, Karen, I used a couple of things that you said in your talk, and it's changed everything. It's changed everything in my business. Yeah. That's how gratifying is that, right? And then even just from the podcast, the emails that I would get from people all over the world saying, from a little church in Africa, where they had this one pastor had people gather around the computer to listen to my podcast. It's just like, really? Wow. And then people saying, oh, I was able to sell and buy my dream house. I was able to, find the love of my life. That, it's just so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift our discussion now to talking about kind of this specific area of expertise you've developed around, the idea of attraction and mindset. And the first question I have for you is really all about, how can somebody specifically apply a lot of these concepts to public speaking? Mm-hmm. So we touched upon it just a little bit in your personal story about, it really was a mindset issue and some of those things that you had to kind of readjust in in yourself and how you thought or viewed, your perception of other people looking at you and what you have to offer. Are there any lessons that you can share for the audience related to this approach?
Sure. Well, one of the things that my message keeps kind of course, getting honed, more and more, like it's an evolution for all of us, right? I think probably the best thing I can share with you is what I'm sharing right now with, in my messages or in my talks and on my podcasts is, I call it QQCC, and it stands for question, questformation, clearing, and celebration. And so And I can't get into all of that because I could talk about this forever, yeah. Right?
Go listen to Karen's podcast and you'll learn more.
Thank you. But also, just in terms of just starting just with questions is just asking yourselves better questions. And again, this kind of comes from Tony Robbins, but I've really started to use this more in depth now. If we ask ourselves really good questions, more open questions, like what would it take for me to be really good in this upcoming event? Who could show up that could help me? What do they want to hear, right? And then just kind of sitting back, not trying to figure out the answer, but actually just let that information come, because just the way our subconscious works, has so much access to information that's all around us all the time. So whatever it is that we want to be changing and shifting in our business and in our speaking business, it's here now. But because we try to figure it out, because we're trying to actually access what we already know, which is in our conscious mind, we'll just keep doing the same things over. So if you just ask really good questions, that's a really good start. So again, what would it take to develop my business? My speaking business? What would it take to for this company to hire me, right? What would they like to hear? Again, just putting those questions out and then going and doing something else while that information comes to you and kind of bubbles up for you.
Excellent. So now what about, I've noted that you talk with a lot of salespeople and the idea of attraction in the selling environment. And quite frankly, all of us, a past guest of mine, Daniel Pink, has pretty much clearly stated that we're all in sales now. Doesn't matter what you do, you're selling something, whether it's you're trying to convince your kids to go to bed at night, or you're trying to close a big deal with a prospect. We're all trying to sell something, and it's really positioned around how we message, how we communicate, and how we persuade. Mm-hmm. So I would love to kind of get your personal take on this idea of using this particular approach to mindset and attraction in this situation where I'm a speaker and I'm trying to sell my message to the audience.
Yeah.
How do I stay true to myself and at the same time have fun at it without just being like, I'm just dumping a bunch of information on the audience, but I'm actually engaging with them and creating something that's memorable? Are there any tips that you'd give the audience?
I think the biggest tip that I would give to start would be, again, making it about your audience, right? So we tend to kind of get wrapped up in ourselves and how am I going to present myself and how am I coming across and how are they going to see me, as opposed to what do they need in this moment and in every audience. So even though our talks, they may be really similar, it's going into each event and going, okay, what does this group need from me? And then getting that from them, kind of getting that information and interacting with them that way. Because I don't know if you've ever, we've all probably been to talks where the speaker gets up there, they have a really good talk, but it actually really has nothing to do with you. They're just, talking at you, right? I like to engage people. When you engage people, that's when that's really attractive, right? Because again, it's about them, and then again, you can just create that energy between the both of you. That is just very, very, very powerful. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely one of those things where, the thing that makes someone attractive to another person or another group of people maybe is really the enthusiasm, the energy, the excitement. That those things are contagious. Those things are something that people gravitate towards, and being able to tap into that and focus more on what can I give them rather than, how do I look when I'm standing in front of this group, or all the things that go through our heads when we start to focus on ourselves.
Yeah.
And, this is definitely a theme that's been recurring through many of the discussions that I've had with other guests on the show, is this idea that it's not about you, it's about the audience.
Yeah.
And when you recognize that and you begin to start thinking about it in those terms, then a whole new world of possibility opens up. And that's when you're done sharing your message, you're going to have a line of a dozen or more people wanting to come and talk to you after that to either share with you briefly like how your message resonated with them, or some idea that it inspired. There's a lot of really cool things that happen once you allow that to occur and really focus on what it is that the audience needs versus what how you look or how you sound.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Karen, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a minute for our rapid fire Q&A.
Okay.
Research in 2009 by Pablo Bernal revealed that by simply taking a posture of confidence, people feel more confident. Now there's a device that can help you with this. It's called Luniw, and I've already pre-ordered mine. If you'd like to boost your confidence when speaking in public through better posture, check out whatthespeak.com/lift to watch the video and grab one for yourself. Well, Karen, let's dive into our rapid fire Q&A portion of our discussion. And the first thing I've got for you is I wanted to ask, when you give a presentation, are you a slide or no slide kind of gal?
Slide. Because again, you want to, in this kind of, this is not rapid, but in this environment, people are so used to having so much coming at them that if it's just me, I'm pretty animated, but I think having more things going on is good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as far as speakers go, other speakers that are out there, is there somebody that inspires you? And if so, who are they and why do they inspire you?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, Tony Robbins, of course, was the original, and so I like to get out there and punch the air, right? And I'm only like 1.5 feet shorter than him, but I do my own version of that. But besides that, I would say Wayne Dyer is probably also one of the people that inspires me. Only because one of the things that he said gave me permission to not have to have everything canned, where he just said, I just go out there, and be myself and just kind of get a sense of where people are at, and I just get guided and the words come. So I love that. I'm not always that great at it, but I love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, is there something like that's been the craziest, most bizarre, maybe funny or silly thing that's occurred to you when standing before an audience?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to think about this, and I was drawing a blank until we started talking. And it's just a silly thing, but certainly as a woman, I had this pair of pants that I was wearing. Mm-hmm. I put the whatever it is for the wireless thing on my pants. And my pants started to fall down through the whole presentation. So I'm fixing that.
That's funny.
That happened just in January. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is just a surprise.
Those things can be heavy. So they make sure you wear a belt or something.
Yeah. Well, and these pants didn't have that. It was like, oh, this just, so I kept, I kept telling them how inelegant I was. So
that's funny. So was it one of those things that you just kind of rolled with it and kept like just going forward, or did anything, did you talk about it with the audience?
I talked about it with the audience because well, one, if my pants fell down, then they would understand why. Yeah. And two, to know that it wasn't a nervous twitch that I kept, hiking up my pants up. So
that's awesome. All right. A good story. I like that one. So, We kind of touched upon this a bit, and I usually like to kind of re-ask this in a certain context. So speaking has obviously had an impact on your business.
Yes.
But can you kind of personally describe, what the impact has been, and really that it ties back to your ability to communicate your message?
Sure. Well, I'll take it from two angles. So starting from podcasting and speaking in podcasting, if I wouldn't have a business, if I didn't have that venue to start, it allowed me to connect with people all over the world, and therefore now I have clients that I coach and work with all over the world. So it started there. Then what that also gave me was a platform to go to anybody and say, hey, I have 20 million downloads. I must have something good to say, right?
Yep.
And so that created that, which then allowed me to go and speak to groups. And from there, it was really about, I get coaching clients virtually every time I speak. So it's pretty profitable that way.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. So last thing we've got here is for somebody who's just getting started and all the things that you've learned over the years, as you've kind of evolved with your ability to speak and to get out there and share, kind of your insights, your perspective, your message. What's one thing that you would share with somebody who's just starting?
Sure. The thing that I wish there had been more emphasis, or when I first started podcasting again, the everything was just a little bit different. So it was all about free. You give everything away free, and so that was so much my focus that nobody told me that you should have a funnel of things. So it was like free your coaching. So it's like you get something free or you spend lots of money with me, and there was nothing in between. And it took a lot of time to do that. And in the meantime, in building an audience, that was missing. So I think in having a funnel of just, some free, then low cost, and kind of medium cost things for people to connect with you about I think that would be my best advice in terms of having that back end. So, because going out to speak, to get your message out is great and it's great practice, but you also want to be having some income coming in as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Karen, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. We'll have links to your website, your podcast, your social media profiles, all that good stuff over in the show notes at whatthespeak.com. And again, I want to sincerely thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, and especially sharing that you had an issue with your pants falling down. Great story, great message, and you truly are somebody who kicks ass when they speak, present, and pitch.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Sure thing.
All right.
Today's guest certainly had some amazing insights they shared. If you'd like to purchase a copy of their latest book, visit this episode's show notes over at whatthespeak.com and click the link at the bottom of the page to immediately order their book.
All right. Here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What to Speak. Be sure to visit whatthespeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.